telling me that she has class and clothes. Has she got these and those? You're telling me. Is she a beauty, a nifty dresser, a little cutie? Did you say yes, sir? You're telling me that she's got loads of charms that fit right in your arms. You're telling me.
Well, greetings from the art galaxy. We are here. The Girl by Michael Schwartz is completed. And we're starting a new project. I'm happy to say something a little different. And as you can see, it says Modern Old Master Watch and I'll Explain, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Before we get started, I'm going to make sure that you can see this perfectly. Oops. My apologies. There we go. There we go. And there she be. There she be. And what I'm going to be doing first is this is actually a modern picture, done to look like a golden age Dutch old master. But it's a modern picture, and the guy who does them, I believe it's his daughter, and he sets them up so they kind of are a little twist on a Dutch golden age Baroque master. But the quality of the photography is so good that, which, believe me, is hard to find. The quality is so good that it's amazing. It really is. It never ceases to amaze me, to be honest with you. The quality in the photographs and the resolution between when I left 4 years ago for Belize for 3.5 years, whatever the date is, anyway, and how far it's come. Like, I know if you live it, it doesn't sound like it's a big change, but believe me, it's a huge change. We've gone from like, it's okay, to you're looking at it from 3 inches away, which is, as the artist, was exactly what I need, and I want to see the detail. Anyway, this picture is going to be done like a Baroque old master, and I think if you look at it, you'll see how you can change their method of painting can be applied to today. I personally don't know anybody who's doing this except me, and or the two of us, as I see my reflection in the monitor. But anyway, no, just me. I don't know if anybody else is doing it. Great. I know there's a few people who do Bouguereau, and a few others, and I can paint like I've been taught to paint like Renoir and a number of artists over the years. I was taught by a classically trained artist, and the thing is that it just doesn't get taught, as far as I know. There are places that will teach it, but in general, it just doesn't get taught anymore. Now this, I've made this an added little difficulty level. Love a challenge, right? Anyway, the reason I'm saying that is that I'm translating this into what would normally be an oil painting into acrylic. Well, a challenge is for this one is that I'm going to make it look like an oil painting, and which is kind of fun because that's what I've been doing. Doing old masters in acrylic. So just saw on the screen right, it's coming up in a second, of Rembrandt's Man in the Golden Helmet, and it's a completely different way of painting. Oil is more forgiving, whereas there's Rembrandt's up right now in the top right hand corner, and following that's going to be the Girl with the Pearl Earring. This is kind of like the Girl with the Pearl Earring type of style. It's a completely different portrait, obviously, but that's the style it's going to be painted in. I've made it a bit larger than the Michael Swartz, and the reason I've done that is I want to get the skin tones just perfect, because I can see the painting so clearly, or the photograph so clearly, that I can But I'll tell you right now, it's going to be a bitch. So you might hear a little bit of swearing, a little bit of "oh, damn it," and all this stuff. Well, if you do, my apologies in advance, because that's just me kicking my head around in the artistic side of my brain going, Jesus, can't you get this? Anyway, hopefully you'll enjoy it. As I said, there's not a lot of people doing this, and as I said, I can do Renoirs and whatnot. The trouble is when I'm getting when I get these high resolution photographs of the paintings in the Rijksmuseum and the Louvre, etc., and the Hermitage, when you get really, really close to them, they're done like any oil painting is, that you look at it from a number of feet away and your eye blends the colors. Well, because of the size of these paintings, I really can't do that. I need those details. So I'd have to kind of make up a lot of it in order to guess in the details that where they were going. And I can do it, but I don't think it would be fun to watch. And so I've kind of decided that Renoir, and the only ones you can do really are Dutch Baroque, and mind you, that's unlimited almost, like Van Dyck's, and those are all Rubens to a lesser extent, and obviously Rembrandt's, and so on. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of paintings that can be done. But the point being that if you want to move into that area where you're getting into a Renoir era, etc., even the Pre-Raphaelites, they just don't translate well into acrylic. So, needless to say, I'm going to do this like a Dutch Baroque Golden Age painting. And in order to do that, I'm going to stop talking and put down the first layer of I'll be using some flow medium, so I used up a ton of it last night. Finishing off the Schwartz. There we go. Anybody ever watched the Beverly Hillbillies, you understand my measuring method. It's 1 drop for every 20 drops of water, so there you go. And I'm going to underpaint it with a I'm going to use more of a blue this time. And in this case, I'm going to use an ultramarine blue. And I'm going to put it down as a light layer. And it'll dry quite quickly. And then we can start the painting.
Matter with it? Why, that's like saying what's the matter with that car? Nothing. Nothing at all. I just didn't think anything could be that good. And that's what thousands of people are saying about the Dodge Beauty winner of 1936. Nothing could be that good. But it is.
Well, you know what? I'm saying that, and I need to put a little bit of green into it. I thought I'd get away with it until I started mixing in the color. And what I'm looking for is my Hooker's green. I don't know why every time I turn around it's here we go. So Hooker's green is, or was, the equivalent of sap green in oil. But I think a few people started making sap green, so it's a little confusing to me what the difference is in the color, but I haven't really checked, so still a bit of confusion there for me, but so I want just the right amount of blue underneath this. And if you want to know the technical term of this, it's called painting grisaille. And grisaille is not a fancy word by any means. It simply means that it's gray in French. And that's all it means. And the reason they did this was to get the skin tones. When I see people's skin, I see a ton of different colors. And the reason for that is that, you know, my eye breaks down the colors. And it's just unconscious. I can't help it. And I see exactly what they were looking at. And this light blue-gray tone is actually the blood under the skin. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, if you can just take a look at the back of your hand, you will see the color of the vein. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if I do it just right, it may indeed become a modern masterpiece. Don't hold your breath, but it's possible. And I'm doing these as if they're troons anyway, so it's simply to show off that I know how to paint, which is exactly what they used to do anyway, so it doesn't make any difference at all. That's what they did. I know how to paint, look! And that's what they did. Jeez, more. You know, that's way too much. Too much green in it here. Wish you could do that in oil paint. I'm putting on light coat because I want the paint, the glazing to show through. And this is just an application. It has nothing else to do with anything. Without it.
Oh, how I cry. Oh, how I cry. If you got tired and said goodbye, more than I thought, more than you'd ever know. More than you know. More than you know.
And I'm getting all my guidelines here. I always put in where the guidelines are for shadows just to remind me so I don't get off track. And it's a common thing with artists, you know, you get so involved in a painting you forget to not follow the brush. You start following your guideline, but you start following the way the paint's going down, or you're chasing a shadow or something, and it can mess you up. It happens a lot. It's because you're in that sweet spot, you know, and you sort of drift off into oblivion. And we all do it. The thing is, I think why most of us do it is because we you get, I don't know what it is, you get into that little bit of heaven in your head, you know? And you just start following the yellow brick road. And I think that will... I put this as a really, really thinned out coat of acrylic. And I did this specifically because I want to get those skin tones in. Now she looks like a plague victim, I know, but you're gonna have to bear with me just for a few minutes until I can get it on the road. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. There we go. There she be. So... okay, let's let that dry for a moment or two. And remember, if you have any questions at all, just fire it into the chat line. I'll explain everything. So I'm sure, well, I know I forget some stuff when I'm doing this, so I'm just going to adjust the light a little bit here. Now, I'm not expecting this to be the same level of difficulty of, say, the girl with the pearl, or the girl with the red hat, which was 7 hours on like the size of a 50-cent piece. And the reason I say that is because I was reproducing specific tonal ranges that Vermeer used, so that was a difficulty. In this particular case, I'm doing the tonal ranges, so I can decide where it is and how it is, etc. and how much and how I want to move it over. So it's not going to be 7 hours of maybe it was agony watching that, I don't know. If it wasn't, good. If it was, I'm sorry. I gotta admit, she looks pretty hideous right now. We will change that, I promise. Now there's about half a dozen distinct tonal ranges. And I have to allow for where he played with the picture as well. He photoshopped just a tiny bit of it. And what he did was in this section here, he blurred it slightly to enunciate the shadow under her chin, which is fair enough. You know, you can do that in Photoshop, but there's guys like me out there that know how to do that stuff, and so I have to make allowances for that. And he did a pretty good job. Let's see, yeah, he did this part of the jawline. It's okay. I can live with that. Okay. And away we go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with some garden variety flesh tone. And I'm just going to gray it down a bit with some blue. Oh man, that's a nice tone. Now what I'll do is I'll get these down, and then what I'll do is I'll glaze color on top of it. Gotta make it a bit brighter because of the undertone. The underpainting, I should say. I was asking myself the other day why or when I would go back and do some oil painting, and I don't know. The reason I say that is because I've gone so far down this road with acrylic, getting these tonal ranges, that I really this is a lot of fun, I gotta tell you. I mean, I'm really enjoying it, so I don't know. I don't know. But no matter, I mean, the point is, I guess, is that you just keep painting. Now this is where it gets a little complicated in the next layer over. And you know, this also kind of gives me a little bit of freedom to establish my own ranges here, which, to be honest with you, is kind of nice, because you're not following the pattern of I mean, you're not matching the patterns of color that were used on the old master. So you're using similar colors, but you're not matching it exactly. And I match all colors with my eye, so it's well, I just gotta say, it's not easy. That's the whole point, though, you know. Like, if it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
You are listening to Radio
and it's fun. I mean, I just find it as close as Nirvana to Nirvana as you can get. So I'll tell you, I've been, well, I guess anybody who's watched me knows me that I do a lot of study and research because that's what I enjoy doing, and I've been studying a really neat, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know all about it. I knew about it. Which was the mound builders in North America. And I've been applying some regular, good old anthropological and archaeological techniques to my study pattern, and man, am I confused from what's out there in terms of research. I'm completely and utterly confused. And if you kind of want to know what I mean by that, it's well, let me back up. Let me back up a bit to give you a frame of reference. Oh, come on. There are mounds. In other words, earthen pyramids, huge pyramids made of mounds of earth. And I don't mean to say they just piled it up. They're done with they've been excavated, archaeologically excavated, and they're very deliberately made. And I mean very deliberately made. And they're huge. Some of them started before the pyramids. And what I've been trying to figure out is who the hell built them? Pre-Mesoamerican, who built these bloody things? So right now I'm at a point where I'm reading about the accounts of some early Spanish explorers in the 1600s that came upon people that they thought may have been related to the people who built these things. And it's the accounts are fairly accurate, are quite accurate, and actually a couple of accounts there was a French painter along with them. He did watercolors, which now are all lost, but they did. There's copies of them, so they kind of know what these people were doing. And the reason why it's so intriguing to me is that it differs so much from the experience people had with indigenous Indian tribes as they met them. The early explorers met them, because these people had no clue who built these things. There is an account of a Spanish explorer who did in fact come across people who did have some knowledge of them, and he wrote down what he basically was told But I think it's what he found was kind of mislabeled by modern archaeology, and the reason I say that is these particular mounds are labeled. Well, I should call them mounds. They're pyramids. That's what they are. They're earthen pyramids, and I think they're mislabeled because the record shows that they were they labeled them as hunter-gatherer pyramids. Well, I'm sorry, that does not compute. A hunter-gatherer society that could hunt enough stuff to make these pyramids? I don't think so. You need a society that is very, very well versed in socio and economic about the civilization to even come close to doing this kind of stuff, because the organization that it would have taken to build these things, and then they claim, well, some of them might have been built over 100 years and whatnot. Well, that means that, you take a human lifetime and see how long it takes to pass on that information without a written record is very, very unlikely, in my opinion. Because who passes it on? It just doesn't make any sense. So I've been researching this and researching this and researching this, and I'm like a dog with a bone. And I'm reading, and really there's not much. And there's such hokum out there. And what I mean by that is, in the 1800s, there's people made such crazy claims, like they were built by giants, and oh God, it's just unbelief. All refuted, by the way. I mean, and rightfully so. But just crazy stuff. Von Daniken type of stuff, it doesn't help. But some of this folklore gets passed into the current narrative, and a lot of effort is done in refuting all this stuff and digging up, saying, you see, I told you it was BS, and anyway, I had to go through all that crap, and obvious hoaxes, but it's still underlying, all that still is underlying the main question of who were these guys? And it's not just one group either. Let's just make that clear. You're talking about mound builders all the way from Illinois down to Louisiana, Florida. It was a group of people nobody knows about, and truly there's just not been enough study done. And everybody's heading off to Egypt. Well, that's great, but in our own backyard, we have some astounding mysteries to solve, and there's not a lot of part of it also is the way the law is. I mean, you can't there's an act that was passed by Congress in the U.S. that you can't disturb an Indian burial site. And I understand that, but the problem is that every time they go to excavate a mound and they find any skeletons or whatever, they're immediately pounced on by the local tribes, who say you can't touch the bones of our ancestors. Well, the trouble is it's not their ancestors, and but you can't change the. You can't change the prevailing politically correct people I mean, it's like, what the hell was his name? The Cannabut man? The guy they found on Vancouver Island a number of years ago. It was a body that was tied up by the Bureau of Indian, or not Indian, sorry, I don't know, land management, whatever it was. They kept archaeologists from it for like a decade before they figured out trying to figure out who he was. And they finally just gave up and just gave it to the locals. But they did a lot of study on it, what they could at the time anyway. And turns out that he is Asiatic and related to the I think it's the Ainu people in Japan, the original inhabitants of Japan. Asiatic people that were nomadic, and it's old. This was a really old burial site, but well, it was a find. It wasn't as good as the Otzi find in Austria, but it was a find, I will tell you that. Well, we're going to get into just a tad bit of yellow here in order to get one layer in that
1900 Music Preservation, a non-profit organization
closer to flesh tone here.
Attention of new and appreciative modern audiences.
Anyway, these mound builders, they
consider giving us your support to whatever degree you're able.
it's
For more information, go to www.
It's absolutely fascinating. Like, who the hell were these guys? Who were these guys? I was afraid that would happen. Okay. Oh, I know what happened. There we go. Anyway, makes for fascinating research and figure out who these people were. Like, the reason I find it so fascinating is you have to remember, like, they these people were. I mean, you just don't decide to build a mound that's like takes 1 million barrelfuls of or a couple million barrelfuls of dirt and pile it up in different strata, and you just don't decide to do that one day and say, oh, okay, there's a good idea, we'll just spend the next 100 years doing this. That doesn't happen. It takes a real socioeconomic organization and skill. I mean, somebody has to know what they're doing to begin with, and you just can't pile up dirt. It'll just erode away. So the layers have to be done properly. Different types of strata have to be used, and who moves it. Obviously, physical labor. There was no draft animals in the New World, so it had to be done by hand. So the question is, what kind of organization did this take, and the volume of people that they would have taken to do it? Like, when the Spanish ran into these people in the late 1500s, one site, the people they visited, they had 30,000 people approximately in the immediate area. Well, the biggest city in Europe would have had not really any more than 30,000 people in it in those days. So it you can see why it's odd. Now, one account from a French explorer who went to the same area 30 years after the Spanish had been through, and there wasn't one person left alive. It completely disappeared. And speculation has been that they may have introduced measles or smallpox or something like that to them, which is entirely possible. But they completely disappeared. And you know what they say about the moche and the makes complete sense, but there's no correlation in those ratings that really dwells on that. That's why I say I'm really a little disgusted with the archaeological record, because it's very sketchy. I mean, what I'm trying to say is it really deserves way more study, and there hasn't been much. And you know, when you think about it, it's right in the backyard, right? And you know, and then you've got some early criticisms of the people involved in it that said, well, yeah, but you know, we have a written record in Egypt. Well, they weren't even able to translate that stuff until the 1800s. So give me a goddamn break, you know, like, please. Like, they're still translating the bloody hieroglyphics. So, you get all this professional bias, that's what I call it, and of course that's academia, you know. I mean, if you're ever involved in it, do yourself a favor and just stay clear, because it's just so many assholes. Pardon my French, but there's so many people with so many agendas, and it all comes down to one thing. And you know what that one thing is? Publishing rights. Hell, I think half the time they publish stuff just in order to get a contrary point of view in. I ran into this. I was on a dig in Belize, and actually it was really neat because it was right where I lived. Of course, everywhere you go in Belize is right where you live, but this was really close, and it was a huge center, Mayan center, and it extended over miles and miles and miles and miles. And the archaeologists, they were from, I think they were from Temple. I'm not 100% sure now, I don't remember. But anyway, We spoke to them at length. I mean, at length. And it wasn't until, well, it didn't last a long, long time. It didn't go a whole season or anything like that. But the time they did have there, she one of the women was an introvert, and the other one was oh God, I don't know what she was. Anyway, 2 female archaeologists. No, that's not a criticism. That's just the fact that they were 2 female archaeologists. But as much as they screamed, we don't have any preconceived notions of anything. But they hadn't. How the hell does that go? Oh, jeez. Okay, I missed that. There had been extensive archaeological section done about 30 years earlier by a Belizean archaeologist and a team from the United States, and they had really had more success because they had dug in another spot, and just the luck of the draw. But there was extensive papers and things written, and I talked to them for a good length of time, and not once did they mention. I just found her by accident, and I thought, well, you're treading over ground that's already been tread in a lot of their research, and to this day, I don't even know if they knew that, because it was had been fairly, well, in archaeological terms, it's not old, but it is in terms of publishing papers. I wasn't even aware they even knew about it. And there had been a lot of artifacts taken out, and that were on display, believe it or not, in Belize City. And I went, holy Jesus, I mean, did they not know? Then I thought, well, maybe I should write them and say, you should. I thought, screw it. If you're not interested enough to look. But then I found out later it was just they were chewing up a grant that had been given by an alumni. So that happens too. Like an alumni will give a grant and they say, okay, what are we going to do to spend it? Okay, what's not too expensive to do? And Belize came up, and because a lot of the stuff they get down into Mexico, but they try to stay clear right now because of the relations, political differences and whatnot. And some of these areas are extremely remote from today's perspective, anyway. But anyway, I thought, Jesus, Murphy, same old, same old. That's what I got out of it. Just crap. Like, you wouldn't believe the amount of, what the hell is that? Some little artifact on the painting. These professional rivalries are just crazy. I mean, but see, it's all done to publish. All of it. And if you get published, you get more money. Simple as that. And that's one of the reasons why I decided not to bother with the correspondence, because it's the only downside with acrylic. You get a little ridge in there. If that happens to you, by the way, just take the back of your brush and just get rid of it before you build up on it, because it's there we go. But anyway, back to the mound builders. This is fascinating, because all these people have virtually disappeared from the historical record. Like, there's not much known. And to show you how old they are, like, not, you know how the Indians have traditional oral histories and whatnot? Well, that's all been checked out, and there's no oral histories of these people. So the most notable would be probably the Navajo. You know, there's no oral history of the Anasazi at all. So who were they? God loves a mystery, right? I mean, so and socially astute organization to do a project like that. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't. I mean, you need people, and to explain that, you know, you need people for, well, you need people for administration. You need people for, there has to be enough food production. There has to be enough social organization that the difference between the number of people farming and the number of people building, and when did they build, and oh, it's on and on and on until you finally realize that something's going on much more involved in simple hunter-gatherer society. And think about it. You have even a city of 30,000 people. Well, how much food does that take? Who produces that? And how much labor does it produce the food? Remember, these guys didn't have tractors. Everything's done by hand. No draft animals, nothing. Well, you got to think, like, holy Moses. I mean, who figured all this stuff out? And if you're going to build a mound, it just doesn't happen. You know, like, somebody has to say, okay, we're going to use this type of rock or stone, rock and stone for this layer, then this rock and stone for that layer, and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, it just doesn't erode away in a season. And they figured, this has all been noted, and it was obviously figured out by these people. And so you know, he asked himself the question, like, well, who were these guys? No record exists. Nothing. Just observation. And the results of what they did. You know, there's burials and ceremonial stuff, but nobody knows. Nobody has a clue. And, yeah, archaeology loves a mystery. Especially if you're digging into the past. I mean, But there, from what I could find, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know of it, let me know, because I'd love to find out who is doing any type of research into this. Because I can't find any, which is strange, you know. And the amazing part is, it's not just one. I mean, there's tons of them. I mean, we don't even know. If you think about it, like, you don't even know who these people were or anything about them. And I personally think a lot of it's been mislabeled and you know, they made assumptions. Again, when this was a hot topic, you know, in the 1800s, you know, there was so much crap that, you know, like BS that came forward that, you know, I can see why people, when they found out they were just being lied to, they kind of sort of went, oh, hell with it, you know, it's hokum. But they know better now, and it's still not being looked at. I mean, if you think about it, like, you know, if you're a university in Arizona or Illinois, why the hell aren't you doing some research on the mounds? In fact, some of these mounds were destroyed before they even realized what they were mounds. Highway. Can you imagine plowing through the Colosseum? Like, you know, like, oh my God. I mean, this is what you're looking at. But it would appear that there was a much more advanced civilization. And I don't mean Atlantis, I mean advanced agriculturally, socioeconomically, etc., than was found during when the white man finally made it to North America. You know, it could have been Aztec type of situation, and it sure would be nice to know. Because right now, so I'm looking. So I'm saying I'm looking, but I can't find much. I can find lots of information about the mound and where it is and all this neat stuff. But real modern techniques of archaeological work done. It's a wasteland out there. A wasteland.
Radio Dispute is now on Facebook. Find us at facebook.com/Radio Dispute.
Streaming the sounds of 1920 and 1930 around the world 24 hours a day. This is Radio Dispute. RadioDispute.com.
So anyway, this is a build-up to get to the color. This is obviously in the shadow side of the face. But the mountains, have you been to, have you, geez, I'm sorry, I'm in my, 1849, geez, I'm sorry so about that, what you mix the color is a small space, yeah, sure, Patsy. God, I just happened to look up and I saw it, and it's right in my eye too, yeah, I can show you that. If you're still there, Pat, I can show you. I'm mixing up skin tone over here, and I'm adding little bits of blue, little bits of oh my God, ultramarine blue and hooker's green for the undercoat, and then I'm using some skin tone, regular stuff that you know how to do. Nothing mysterious, and to get the but as you can see, the underpainting is really the most important thing, because I'm slowly building up layer after layer on the underpainting to get that skin tone. In fact, you can see it coming through right there. See that? Isn't that beautiful? Oh my God. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes just to set a little bit. Yes, folks, the acrylic paint has to set just for a little bit, just to get it to. Oh, I didn't expect you to do that, but that's okay. I'll just layer you out. Da, 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 da. Oh, hi, Ivan. How are you? Oh, you're good. Okay, Patsy. Just give me a sec, Ivan. What I'm doing is, so you've got your green undertone, green blue in this case for what I want, and then regular skin tone, yellow, transparent white, not titanium white, transparent white, and a little bit of red. And for my skin tone, and then what I did is I'm glazing it on in order to get that undercoating of color come through, which will give you that, which you can just faintly see, which is giving you the realistic skin tone. And I will again come down a little bit with it further as this sets up. Oh, there you go, a group hug. Okay. Oh, God. A group hug. God, that just makes me feel warm and snug all over. Oh, hit my funny bone there, Scott. Anyway, Ivan. You asked me a question. Hold on, let me just take a quick look what it was. Let me see. Have you heard of the Mandela effect? And what do you think is happening, if anything at all? So much misremembering. Well, I really don't put much credence in the anything Mandela did. I know the effect, but you know, it's so much crap. You know? I don't know. I really and truly don't put much credence in any of that stuff. As soon as you peel away the onion, you find out that most of it's just crap. And Mandela, yeah, he was a sweet old man, but you know, he was doddering. And he let his wife, Winnie Mandela, just when I think about it, her, what was it, the South African Soccer Club or whatever it was just a murdering bunch of thugs. All done while he was out of prison, by the way, and an international figure. In fact, if I remember correctly, he finally told her she had to stop only after they had done their damage. But unless I'm not getting it, like, what do you consider the Mandela effect? Give me a recap, and I'll let you know. You hear, Ivan? Okay, maybe you're typing. Like, more specifically, what exactly did you want me to comment on? Because now I'm thinking about it. Here, you gotta kickstart the old neurons in my brain. You know, I'm not young like you guys. Oh, that was great. I dropped a bit of water on there and it just sort of ate its way through. What do you remember differently? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm losing the train of thought here. Was it about Mandela? Sorry, I'm just a little confused here. They never found the guy that kidnapped that little girl. New Zealand was northeast of Australia. Now you really got me confused there, guy. I don't know where you're coming from on that. Which map? Like, oh, Amanda. Okay. Thank you. Common misconception. Okay. The problem is that really nobody knows anything about who said what. I mean, but regardless of that, I understand your point. The misconceptions. It really isn't. It really isn't about. It's not really about who said what. It's the context behind it. You know, like I don't know if you've ever heard of Charles. Well, that happens all the time. I mean, yeah. Well, you can read the newspaper every day. There's a perfect example. I mean, it's all. I think human beings basically just make things up in order to fit the circumstance of the minute. you don't find out, even if you go back. Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, take the Second World War, right? There are so many misconceptions about the Second World War that, and this isn't a commentary on the Germans. Always written by the victors, and the victors could be a political party. It could be a war. It could be anything. And the truth of the matter is that you're always looking at things through glasses that have been fogged by misconception, right? I mean, or you've made history fit. I mean, a perfect example that happened this past summer, if I remember correctly, was the Confederate removing all the Confederate they wanted to move all the Confederate statues and all this stuff, and if anybody knows anything about the Civil War, it really wasn't about slavery. It never was. And, but it's been hijacked, so to speak, by people who want to make it about slavery. And I don't just mean black people. I mean people who want the political correctness of today reflect what they reflect today's attitudes about things, and that's kind of what happened. And if you just look at the statistics, I mean, like the average Confederate soldier sure as hell didn't own any slaves. So what the hell was he fighting for? There was nothing to do with that, really. Lincoln freed the slaves for one reason only: to loosen up hundreds of thousands of troops and cause economic disruption in the South, production of food, grain, material, and really, that's the truth of the matter. They hijacked it to be about slavery, but it really wasn't. I mean, not that don't get me wrong. I don't agree that the slavery was right or at all, but the point being that the reasons for it, the emancipation of the slaves, had nothing to do with the slaves. Really, it had nothing to do with it. And it was only an issue because the newspapers and abolitionists made it an issue. It hadn't been an issue prior to that. Really, what the Civil War was about was state rights. And if you hear anything different, then they've got an agenda they're trying to push. I mean, and in fact, it's happening again. I mean, you've heard in Texas and California talk of secession from the United States. Well, it's the same thing, only it's being done now as opposed to what it was being done prior to the Civil War. And rich, very rich, wealthy states that were trading with France mostly and supplying the Napoleonic devastation of Europe didn't want to be sending money to any money to the North, and they decided they didn't want to be part of the Commonwealth or the United States, and they got together and said, we're leaving. What happened? Civil War. But it happened many, many times. I mean, it evolved into the Civil War, but you certainly wouldn't. But they're not the only country that this happened to. I mean, it can happen for a number of reasons. Look at England. I mean, with the Cromwell, that was a civil war. And Cromwell was a religious nut, but that really wasn't the reason for the war. You read the history books, and yeah, that's what they'll tell you. Oh yeah, well, Nothing is as it seems. That's the whole problem. And you're right. That's the Mandela effect. Nothing is as one would think it seems. But remember, you got to remember who's writing the history. I mean, a perfect example would be. Oh, don't tell me I got disconnected. Oh, no. Oh, lordy. Have to reboot. Sorry about this, folks, if you've got connections. I hope we're back, because I was getting oh, here we go again. Wouldn't you know it? Technical problems. There we go. Is the gang still here? I don't know. I saw it was trying to the stream was interrupted somehow. I'm not technical, so don't ask me. You gotta ask Art Galaxy Tech if he's there. No, there it goes again. Okay. And we're back again? I don't know. Are we? I don't know. Something's wrong with the stream. I don't know what it is, but it keeps giving me some sort of a main lady in waiting routine here. Let me just see. We will start you again. See if it comes up, because I can't see a thing. Dun 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 dun. I hope that did it. I hope the gang's all here. I was just getting into the point. Oh well. We shall see. We shall see. Could somebody just say hello to see if the thing's working? The resolution just kicked out on me too. I don't know why. Oh, technical difficulties. Oh, you're still here? Okay, Ivan. So maybe it's just my end or something. I don't know. Oh well. Okay, well, I can live with that. I don't know. Oh, okay. So it's just my machine going nuts on me. Okay. Anyway, what I was trying to say earlier about the Mandela effect is, you know, this is perpetrated by the non-stop by people who end up on top of the heap. And the perfect example of that would be the if you want to see, if you want to go way back, it would be Ramses' account of his victory over the Assyrians. And God, if you read it, you'd swear that, you know, he all but obliterated the civilization. It was the farthest thing from the truth. That was just for public consumption. You know? So, if you've ever read Caesar's Conquest of Gaul, it's basically the same thing. Very, very one-sided accounts, you know, like this is, but you know, that's history, you know, you can imagine, you know. How much do you read about the Romans' problems with the Parthians, you know? They never did beat the Parthians, and it's only later historians that even acknowledged it. At the time, no, this was unheard of. And it goes right up through history, you know, like, never ends. That's why I say I kind of think it's like the human condition. Like, that's the people who win the war or win the battle or win the economic battle or whatever the hell you want to call it. That's who writes the history. And it's always been that way. Dun, dun. Every day. What kills me is when you read an account of the same thing from two different countries' perspectives. As a matter of fact, I guess the worst example ever of the Mandela effect would have been the First World War. Where the Germans were forced to accept the Treaty of Versailles because they lost the war. And as a matter of fact, they didn't lose the war. The leaders lost the ability to fight the war because everybody was starving in Germany from the naval blockades. And if you didn't have the Treaty of Versailles, you probably wouldn't have had the Second World War. So there's a couple 100 million people probably that would still be alive or would have not died or whatever. Would just be the worst example I could think of in modern history anyway. Without the First World War, the Second World War wouldn't have happened. Ain't that the truth?
You are listening to Radio Dispute.
But again, and you know, it's used to a great effect even like to this day. If you notice, the Japanese don't put any information regarding their soiree in Manchuria into their history books. You ever wondered why? Yeah, because they'd say they would call themselves barbarians. But that's going on right now. So as I said, so the Mandela effect is alive and well everywhere. And then you, unfortunately too, today, because of mass media, you get guys like Alex Jones. Is it Alex Jones? Alex something. The radio guy who gets sued nonstop in the States. Who because the absolute lies he tells on the radio. And people believe it. And believe me, I've talked to people who really believe it. And it's like talking to the converted. Like, holy Moses, it's scary. First time I really ran into one guy like that, I thought he was joking. And then I found out he wasn't joking. Like, whoa. And I said to myself, this guy is out of his effing mind. But listen, he was a convert, I'm telling you. Not a convert to religion, a convert to Alex Jones. I think it's Alex Jones is his name. Man, but it's okay from the other end. Iben, Patsy, it's okay? Because it doesn't matter on my end as long as it's streaming, right? So maybe you're not here. Okay. Oh, you're here, Pat. So you can see me. Okay. So I'm not being interrupted and stuff like that, or nothing like that, because it keeps my screen keeps flitting in and out here. There it goes again. Man alive. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Okay, well, I don't know what is happening, but whatever it is, it's beyond my technical ability to fix. I glaze way too much in here. Shouldn't say, I'm sorry, I've got to glaze it out, not put too much in. Man, live, what is going on here?
But you just took me to a T. I love you, be my pretty baby. You're just a baby for me.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. The problem is, Patty, that the paint dries so fast that I'm remixing it non-stop, so the problem is it's just confusing.
Radio Dismute is a listener-supported service of early 1900s music preservation, a nonprofit organization devoted to bringing the great forgotten music of the past to the attention of newly appreciative modern audiences. If you enjoy the music we present and value the work that we do, please consider giving us your support to whatever degree you're able. Your contribution will not only ensure that the music continues to
I'm mixing a little bit more skin tone into the whites to see if I can pull out a little bit more. That's still not enough.
1900s.org.
Try and just get the right tonal pattern down here as I get this underpainting part done. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Holy Moses, what is wrong with my browser here? Okay, give us another shot. Dun, dun, dun. No, it's still doing. I don't know what the hell is it. Maybe some of the internet. I don't know. On my end, I don't know. Je ne sais quoi. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Now I'm going to do a little bit of custom-made skin toning. Just a tad, mind you. Buddy, with you. Oh, ain't got nobody. Buddy. Da, 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 da. I got nobody, nobody for me. A little bit thicker paint now. I don't have nobody. Nobody cares for me. I'm not nobody. Now that should give her, she looks just like she's got a nice tan, so. Now I'll do 2 tones up on that. To give the skin some warmth here. I got nobody. I got nobody. Nobody cares for me. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. There, I put in a coat to get her. Pull up the skin tone a little bit. Keep your sunny side. Keep your sunny side up. Dun, 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 dun. Keep your sunny side up. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Keep your sunny side up. The sunny side up. Keep your sunny side up. Okay, I said I wanted it warmer. I didn't say I wanted it sunburned. I want to get all this bass in tonight so I can really focus on the skin tones tomorrow. For minute adjustment. Or maybe not so minute, depends. Sometimes you make one change, you know, and you gotta change everything. I wonder if these guys, what they would have done with acrylic. I mean, like Vermeer and whatnot. My guess is their production would have gone through the roof. That's what I think. Oh yeah, am I gonna take some glazing on here? See, what I'm looking for is some warm tones, but I don't want them so warm that they, how do I explain it? I don't want them so warm that they look peaches and cream. I want that I want to look like a Dutch, the Dutch skin. You know, like it's slightly translucent. That's what I'm shooting for anyway. And if I can't get it, well, I'm saying that, but it's never happened, so hopefully it never won't happen this time either. Oh, it's coming along. It'll take a lot more. Da, 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 da. So I really don't want to get into titanium white yet because I don't want the color to be I don't want it just to be white. I want it to be translucent. Da, 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 da. But the paint gods are telling me to take it easy on this side right now. So I'm going to leave under here alone for now. Yeah, it's coming on. Da, 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 da. Dun, 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 dun. Da, da, da. She's just starting to come through now for skin tones. It's starting. So you might be asking yourself why I'm putting a highlight in the hollow of her cheek. Well, this isn't the final highlight, so that's why. I'm just getting her jawline established again. Dun 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 dun. Well, I gotta tell you, it's gonna take a hell of a lot of glazing to get it where I want it. Mucho glazolo. But that's okay, because I don't mind at all. As long as you don't mind, I don't mind. I want that translucent look, and by God, I'm going to get it. If it kills me, I'm going to get it. You see how that worked there? Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Da, da. Oh yeah, it's getting better every minute. Yes, 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 yes. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. I'm loath to put more white out, but yeah, I gotta have to.
Radio Dismuke is now on Facebook. Find us at Facebook.
Put a little bit more transparent color out, if you know what I mean.
Around the world, 24 hours a day. This is Radio Dismute. RadioDismute.com. HappyMusicRadio.com.
Happy Music Radio. Da 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 da. Now what you do is you just drag this, well it's not drag, paint it on. And it'll give you an infinitesimal layer of white. You do what you want. I think I've left that long enough there. It should be. The trick with acrylic is you gotta let it dry underneath too, eh? It might dry first on top, but you gotta give it a few minutes to dry right through. Because if you don't, if you're using lots of medium, it starts lifting the paint, which is a drawback for this paint. I'd really considered, doing a Bouguereau next, but there's a lot of people do Bouguereau. It's kind of crowded. Not many people doing the Dutch Masters, so not that the thing is with Bouguereau too is his forte really was nodes, and Venus, Aphrodite, and stuff like that. That's really what interests me. That's kind of what I'd like to do, but the trouble is, you can't. So you can't do that stuff here. So I thought of ways around the problem. Just doing bits and leaving other bits that were undone, whatnot. But it doesn't show you the whole completed painting, and like there's a couple of paintings that I'd really like to do on Twitch here, but until they decide that doing nudes isn't pornography, and I'm talking about old master stuff, like not stuff that's modern or anything. Old master, which is kind of funny in a way, because when you think of they're in museums where millions and millions of people have gone to see them, never thought anything of it, and you go on a type of social media site, I guess, and like Facebook or whatever. No, like I understand, but it's just kind of funny. And the thing is, too, the Europeans think we're crazy. Like, you got to look from their point of view. I can remember sitting at dinner in Belize with a couple that was from, I think, Austria or something. And we were having dinner with a group of people we knew. And the girl was from Texas, and I think she was Texas anyway. Somewhere. No, she wasn't. She was from Idaho. Idaho, that's where she was from. And she was talking about her guns, and the Austrian guy, you could just see it. He just couldn't contain himself anymore. He just said to her, "Are you crazy?" What in God's name? And oh boy, did she get her back up in a hurry. Like, it was, whoa. And then he defended his position, so I just sat back and listened, and oh man, I'm telling you, sparks were flying. And it was the NRA against. The only thing that didn't happen was Charlton Heston didn't show up. You know? Mind you, if he had it, that would have been really cool. Huh? But pretty cool from the fact that he's dead. So anyway, man, talk about sparks. Like, it was like, whoa, what is going on here? And oh, for every argument she had another. She had a counter argument. There was no doubt about it. And who won the argument? I think I'd have to come down on the Austrian guy's side, because he knew his figures and things like that, but she didn't. Not only that, but she didn't want to know him either, which was amazing to me, because you think you want to bolster your position but no, not at all. It's just my way, or that's just too bad for you. The whole thing started as a comment she made about this guy who we lived in oceanfront property, and they were all individual houses and lots, and she lived just down the road from us, and she said how a boat had come ashore, like on her property, like on the beach, and she was lamenting the fact that she didn't have her gun. She hadn't had a permit yet, because she would have blasted the guy, and that's what started this whole rampage of a conversation. And I think his point was well taken. Like, would you have considered that maybe they had boat trouble, or maybe they were lost, or, she could have cared less, really. She didn't care. Shoot first, ask questions later. That was kind of like her position, and the more she sort of reiterated that position, the more disturbed he got. It was amazing to see, like, the European point of view as opposed to like the. I just stayed neutral. I didn't say anything. mainly because she was a neighbor. And I didn't want to have to put up with... It's like half the neighbors were Americans, and the Austrian guy wasn't a neighbor. So I didn't want to listen to... neighborhood scuttlebutt that, the damn Canadians, they're soft on guns. Oh, who needs it? Because that's what happens. You end up pegged, right? And then what happens is they, when you least expect it, they'll meet you at another gathering or whatever, and all of a sudden it'll come around and go, what would you do if, like, who needs it? Like, not me. So I just kept my mouth shut. Which, if you know me, was hard to do. But I did. There's one thing about that I found about, now I don't know about everybody in the U.S., but people that I knew from in Belize, well, and they're also, mostly were my age, so I don't know about anything else. So. But whatever state you're from, like people from another state. That's kind of like, they don't hate them, but they're like from a foreign country type thing. Until it's an American thing, and then all of a sudden they stick together like glue, which is good, I guess. So you can see why I didn't want to get into it. No, thank you. Thank you, sir. No, I've had enough. Thank you. But that picture of Clace, it really worked against her. And one reason was she insulted the owner of the restaurant. And we were having barbecued steaks. And the owner knew me. And she gave me a melt in your mouth sirloin. It was just unbelievable. And she gave the woman who told her how much more superior American beef was. She gave her, like, they must have ran the cow to market. I don't know. It was pretty gruesome. She ended up not eating it, so there you go. Rule number 1. Don't insult a person who owns a restaurant if you're eating there. It's just not a good idea. Oh, come on. Got a couple of lumps of paint there. Do not do that. Oh, no, you didn't. You did. Okay. I'll leave you alone, let you dry. Well, folks, what missteps? Okay, let's see. Let me read this. What missteps? What is that?
The Ford dealer near you is headquarters for Ford V8 cars, trucks, commercial cars, RNG used cars.
Let me just see. What missteps do you think led to the economy not being as strong as it once was? Well, in a word or 2 words, greed and China. I assume you're talking about the American economy? They ran out of M&M's at the M&M factory, and all they have left are W's. You know I like M&M's. Ivan, to put it down to a word, greed, or as I say, greed in China. You see, American manufacturing, which is always had been its strong point. What happened was all the companies became public entities. So in other words, they were at the mercy of the shareholders. Now you can be a person who says, I hate this and I won't agree with this and I don't agree with that and whatever, on and on and on and on. But the bottom line is, if you have your money invested anywhere, somewhere it comes back to the U.S., to the stock market. Every pension plan, utility plan, state savings, government savings, anything you could possibly imagine, all ends up in stocks. Stocks and bonds, but mostly stocks. And what happens is that once you're at the mercy of the shareholders can tell you black is white and anything they want. But the bottom line is, if you lose 5% on your investments over the course of a year, then you'll move your money somewhere else. And the people who own these giant corporations know this. And it's not just giant corporations. It's little corporations who are invested in bigger corporations, and on and on and on. It's all just a gigantic jumble of the Gordian knot of money. And what happens is that these gigantic pension funds are run by money managers who only answer to one person, and that's you, the stockholder. Even if you don't know you have stock, you have stock. Because even if you're young, so much of your salary gets put away for investment in terms of, social services and all of these things you pay for, even if you're not physically getting the money. If you lose your job and you go on unemployment or whatever it happens, it all comes out of a gigantic pool of money that is money that's from investment. So it doesn't really matter whether you have investments or not. It all comes down to one thing. Everybody's a shareholder, somehow, somewhere. So what happened was, in order to facilitate this demand for, non-stop demand for increased earnings, and I don't care if you're Apple or Google or AT&T or GE or who the hell you are, you're at the mercy of your shareholders. So in order to facilitate this, they had to raise profits. Now, as the labor movements died going into like the 80s, the Americans had a huge pool of labor that would work for very little money comparatively. And so did Canada. And but the fact the cost of living, have like 50-60% of your people working 40 hours a week and not having enough to buy food. You can't do that, or else you have a revolution. Or just the way it is. So they know that. So wages went up, way behind the curve, but still they went up. Well, this cut into profit margins. So what's the answer to that? Well, the answer to that was move all your manufacturing out of the U.S. and put it somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened. Now, it's no mistake that you go into a store now and everything you pick up and look at, it says made in China. And even the Chinese will find this out given over the next 20-25 years. It's the same cycle will hit them. And the consequence of it is really, it's a gigantic country full of service industry workers. And the wages aren't huge, but the wages are high enough, whether you're selling something or buying something or making some widget or something, they're high enough, the people's expectations aren't screwed over. And one of the reasons for that is because each region of the United States and Canada, I only use those as examples, have different socioeconomic boundaries. In other words, you can get by probably pretty well in one state, whereas if you were in, say, Washington State, the cost of living for you is way different than it is in New York State. And that's just the way it is. So you can't get people to all jump on the bandwagon together because they're all in separate places. Like, as you can, like wages have always been low in the southern states. Well, why? Well, because they've always been low because they were an agricultural base back from the 1800s. And industry was slow to move in. But now when industry figured out that, I can hire people for 2/3 of the price I can get something done in New York State, they all moved to New York State, from New York State. But when they found out they could make stuff a lot cheaper in Mexico than they could in Missouri, they moved to Mexico. Well, you'll get people in government now saying, oh my God, look at the NAFTA agreement, we're screwed and all this stuff. And the truth of the matter is that if they hadn't done it, then those markets, which are like China, they've got a low standard of living comparatively, but there's lots of them. So the volume makes up for it. They would have moved on to different markets. It could have been the European Common Market. It could have been any place. And that's the same as the European Common Market. You can get a house in Belarus for a hell of a lot cheaper you can get it in Germany. It's a never-ending cycle. But it's never really going to end because you can't now change course by moving your manufacturing out of China. Politicians can scream and yell and stamp your feet and all they want. It's not going to happen because you can't produce at the price they can. And the killer of it all is that the shareholders, which are the people who base their 401ks and the utilities and the pension funds and all this stuff, they won't take a drop in value. So nobody will. And it's a riddle that hasn't got an answer, because the money moves up the chain but it doesn't really move down the chain very well. And that's kind of what's happening in the US and what's going to happen to China. The thing that's going to kill China is automation. Comparatively, they rely on very little automation. It's all human labor. And as a machine or a robot or whatever you want to call it takes over 20 jobs and works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doesn't complain and never runs out of energy and doesn't need a break and a lunch and sleep or anything else, those people who are in those industries are going to be out of jobs. And you're going to see real political trouble in China let's say 25, 30 years. You're going to see this. In fact, maybe even sooner, maybe the next 10 years. So it's not going to impact North America as much. It will Mexico, but it won't impact Canada and the U.S. because we don't really have any manufacturing left. Outside of mining, which already has been automated, by the way. It's same old as the service industry work. And it probably won't change, except that they have to figure a way. It really had nothing to do with the baby boomers. It was just inherited from a previous generation. After World War II, like my parents, I'm a baby boomer, and my parents, they worked like crazy because they went through the Second World War. Their expectations were not very high comparatively. And they were happy with a house, a car, and things were rosy. Raised 2 kids, and everything was great. the expectations of their children, my generation, was that it had to go the same way. And it was at that time that really global commerce became to the forefront. Remember, most of the economies prior to like the 1970s were inclusive. In other words, you bought and sold inside your country. There was trade, but not like it is today. And you know, the guys you got to feel sorry for are guys like the coal miners. I mean, we know that the politicos will say, "Oh yeah, coal's coming back. Don't worry, it's never coming back, ever, ever, ever." You can scream and rant and rave and stamp your feet, and steel and coal will never come back to the United States. Why? Because the labor's too high, and you can't rekindle dead industries. All of the Ohio Valley is rusted. They just can't. It would cost billions to redo those plants. And why would you do that? We can get steel from other countries at a fraction the price. Who's going to pay? Well, who's going to pay is people who are putting up the seed money to rekindle those industries. Where does that money come from? Investment. Well, investments therefore look at the long term and say, no, we're not expecting a return in 40 years. We want a return every year. Well, they won't invest, and the money won't be there. Why does the United States have no problem borrowing money from the Chinese nonstop? It's because it's their money. All they have to do to China is say, we're cutting off all your imports, and in 2 minutes the Chinese would be saying, how much money do you need? Because that would cause political upheaval in China instantly. 40% of all Chinese, if not more, I would guess probably closer to 50 to 55%. But the official figure, I think, is about 40% of all Chinese exports end up in North America. And that's just the way it is. And how do you change that?
You are listening to radio.
Nobody really knows. The economy is moving at a pace that nobody can really figure out. The biggest thing to figure out is going to be how to redistribute wealth. Some countries are doing this now, like Norway just did it, and it didn't work out very well. But other countries are doing it too, where you have a minimum guaranteed income. You're going to have to do that. But this isn't new. Bear that in mind. This is not new. I mean, the Roman Empire had a mob in Rome of probably about 1 million people who really didn't have much work at all and couldn't survive. And and to make sure they were always happy, they kept their bellies full. And how did they do that? They imported grain from Egypt. So this is not a new problem. This has been going on since time immemorial. And in a sense, it's really never changed. It's still the same problems. And the money will follow, because of the stocks and investments, will follow the road to the highest return. Well, the highest return is the lowest cost. So you're in a funnel, and the funnel is getting narrower and narrower, and it goes faster and faster. So at some point in time, and then people say, well, yeah, buy Canadian, buy American, buy this. Yeah, the trouble with that is that, yeah, sure it would work, but nobody's going to pay double what they pay now for something they can buy. If you go to the Home Depot and buy a shovel, and now you pay $9.99 for it, and you went and bought the same shovel after they fixed everything, everybody had a job, and it was $59.99, you'd go nuts. People are people. I mean, they won't put up with it, and so you've got the I hate to say it, but in the States, it was the hope that this economic thing would come back home to give everybody a job and everything would be rosy again, was what led people down the garden path. And But now people are realizing, you know, like 500 coal miners going back to work is not fixing the industry. You know, it's 500,000 people or 50,000, whatever the hell the number is. It isn't 500, and that's just not going to happen. It just won't. And also, technology gets better. I mean, you know, you can drive your car now, probably 3 or 4 years without any major problems, just by driving it off a lot. God, 40 years ago, you had to take your car in once every 2,000 miles just to have a once over, or else it just wouldn't work. You know, spark plugs wore out, this, that, the other thing. Now, God, I remember in the 90s buying a Malibu Max. And the reason I bought the Malibu Max was your first scheduled maintenance was 160,000 kilometers, which was equivalent to about 120,000 miles. No, not quite. Let's see, 60 and 30, 100,000 miles before you need your first scheduled maintenance outside of oil changes. Can you imagine that? You drive 100,000 miles and not put a dime into it. Except for gas. And the other thing is what was now in North America, which changes the entire thing again, is that the United States, Canada, and Mexico are oil self-sufficient again, especially the United States. They lifted out their oil exportation ban. They're supplying Europe right now with more oil than Russia is. Fill that gap. And yeah, everybody hates shale, but everybody also hates having to buy oil off the Arabs. And as soon as those contracts are ended, after I think they're 10, 20-year contracts, you wait and see what happens. The Saudis and the Middle East is in full panic mode. They're trying to change their economies as we speak because they know it's coming to an end. The United States is just floating in oil again. Canada has more oil than Saudi Arabia. Mexico has... Oh, it's just endless. And then you wonder, well, they're trying to get off an oil-based economy. That's just bullshit. You know, really. It's just absolute, unadulterated bullshit. Gas and oil are here for probably another 75 years minimum. That's minimum. And the reason it is because it's so efficient. Now, I know people will say, what do you mean efficient? Well, you take 2 tons of metal and move it 20 kilometers for a liter of gas, 30 ounces of gas. You know, points and plugs to it. Right, every goddamn 2,000 miles you had to take it in. Hell, in the 40s you had to take your car in every 2,000, 2,500 miles to have the carbon removed from the engine. Because it didn't have the gas thing, there's so much carbon in it would build up inside the engine. You had to have a complete engine cleanup every 2,500, 3,000 miles. That doesn't exist anymore. You don't have those costs. But you also don't have those jobs. When was the last time you found a mechanic? Everybody is a technician now. There's no mechanics. The car companies figured out how to get rid of mechanics. How? Make your cars that only technicians that they train could fix them. And it's all, and they don't even fix them. It's just component changes. So they pay them like $25 an hour. You have to pay a mechanic, what, $90, $100 an hour or something? You don't have to do that anymore. They might charge you that, but they're not paying that. The car companies to have these guys do that kind of work. So, you know, another thing like a spark plug. You know, who ever heard of this? You know, like in the old, like years ago, you take a car in and you'd have your points and plugs changed on a regular basis. Look at the plug. Look at spark plugs now. Christ, some people have them for the whole length, the entire length they own the car. They don't wear out. Or whatever they do. But this is not getting worse. It's getting better. All of this is getting better. And I know people will say, well, yeah, well, the electric this, electric that. Well, the problem with electric is that you got to generate it, and until they figure out a way to store electricity, which you can't do now, it's really just an experiment. Really, it is. There's no other way. I mean, on a small basis and a limited basis, it will make its entry into the economy, but it won't take over from oil and gas. Just not my opinion, anyway. I mean, drive down the street and count the gas stations. 20 years from now, drive down the street, count the number of gas stations. It'll probably be a few less because of the oil or because of gas efficiency. You might have a couple of places to fill up to recharge your car, but you know, it's all built into the. Look at the price of these cars. Of course, mass production will bring them down, but there doesn't seem to be a. People are still kicking the tires. It may get more. I think really, if you're going to see gas and oil production or cars evolve first, the first evolution is the hybrids. That's where it'll evolve to. So you have a combination of gas and electric. But to have a pure electric car works in Europe very well because it's a small place. You know, you can drive the length of Britain. Well, you can't because of the roads, but it's not that big. You know, and also too, you remember too, ancient cities were meant to be walked, not driven. So everything's compact. Whereas here, to go home from work, people will drive an hour and a half. You know, they live 50, 60 miles from where they work. That was nobody ever would have believed that a few generations ago. You know, this is the internal conundrum of finance. Like, there's nobody to blame. It's just the way it evolves. And what's going to happen? Well, you're going to see some real social turmoil. Most likely in countries that rely really heavily on oil, because the big market, which is North America, is self-sufficient. So you've got Europe. But my guess is Europe will buy all American oil they could possibly can get their hands on. So that'll be a good thing for the United States. And Canada has got... We're a small country population-wise, 35 million people, but we have enough resources to probably supply the world. You're going to see problems in Russia. You're going to see problems in China. You're going to see problems in Southeast Asia. You know, and it's, in a sense, it's already happened. Like, if you look at the Japanese experiment, you know, to keep everything internal and keep your country basically blocked from imports. Well, you know, if you read about the Japanese economy, they've been flirting with deflation. If you want to be afraid of deflation. 1930s style. That'll scare the hell out of you. They've been skirting with deflation for like 15 years now, and there's no way out of it. Sometimes a little bit of movement looks like it's going to fix, and flat back it goes. Problem is, it's an inclusive economy. They realize their problems, but it's not getting better. Now, being Japanese, you know, they have the wherewithal to hunker down and say, yeah, it's okay. But, you know, the trouble with the rest of the world is you really can't do that. Not in Europe or North America. There's just too much immigration, too many other people, too many self-interest groups. I mean, it's no mistake, you know, like, make no mistake about it. All of this right-wing bullshit that you hear, you know, from France and Italy and Germany and the UK and the United States, not so much in Canada. We have our element, believe me. What you're really hearing is fear. That's what you're really hearing. It's fear. Fear that the barbarians are at the gates. That's kind of what you're afraid of. In other words, there's people, a wave of brown people coming at you. And you know what? They're right. But it's nothing to be afraid of. The world never looked at things in terms of color. It wasn't until probably the 17th century it even mattered. Nobody did look at the world that way. It's a modern, even that's a modern phenomenon. You know, I keep telling people about, or mentioning to people in these conversations about, if you want to see people who are really good at killing each other, look at white men. First, they're real good at it. And, you know, now things have changed. It's no longer all that damn German or all that bloody Italian or all this or that other thing. Now, they go, oh, skin color means everything because it's us against them. Well, that's a phenomenon I think will finally just die out. Because the reason you know it's going to die out is because look at the First and Second World War. White men fighting white men. So does it make any difference? What was the difference? They're both white. They spoke different languages. A few different customs. But basically, white men killing white men. So even if you were to not have any other immigration or people from the rest of the world to come in, the white people would still fight. I mean, it doesn't make any difference at all. So, this phenomenon that people are screaming about, like the Le Pen in France and all of these idiots, it's fear. They're playing on people's fears. And, you know, you gotta just think that you can fool some of the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but not all the people all the time. And every time there's a general election, people are more afraid of them than they are the regular institutions. So what happens? They get minority votes every time. Every time. So people in general, I think, understand this. And I don't think you're ever going to see something like what happened in Nazi Germany again. Well, you can't in Germany, that's for sure. They rewrote the Constitution. It's impossible. Or Japan. I don't think you're ever going to see it again. But that's what it is. It's fear. Fear of change, or fear of, you know. And what's the first thing you notice? Oh, Mexicans. Well, you know what? I was down in that part of the world. And you know, guess what? Mexicans don't want to come to the United States for the most part. They might be along the Tijuana border or something like that. But for the most part, Mexicans are, you know, they got a house, a car, a nice job, and they're doing pretty well, and they live pretty nice, and, you know, they have no interest in hiding in the back of a pickup truck and trying to get into the United States. No interest at all. The people of interest in going there, I would think, are the Venezuelans, you know, and terrible political upheaval there. People in Honduras and all those people are making their way through Mexico to get into the United States, but not the Mexicans. But you know, it was like Mexico's we're going to build a wall. Well, why? To keep who out? Mexicans? Mexicans don't want to come in. And then there's the lies too, which, you know, you should always do yourself a favor and go into Wikipedia, which is the easiest and quickest way to go, and look up and see percentages of population by race in terms of immigration in countries. Take Germany and France and Britain, the US and Canada, and go any countries you want, and you will see that the immigration percentage of the regular population is almost infinitesimal. Next to nothing. That's why Germany could take 1 million immigrants in. Wouldn't affect their population at all. Nothing. Social scientists know this. But you listen to Le Pen in France, they make it sound like, you know, we're not going to have a country in... there's a perfect example, actually. Look at the Netherlands, with the right-wing idiots there. And look at the actual percentage of people immigrating from the Mideast and whatnot into the Netherlands. When you stop laughing, get back to me. It's all made up. I mean, all the figures and fairy tales and fantasy and all that bullshit is all made up. It's all done for political effect and power, and they play on people's fears. And that's the bottom line. Is that it's fear, nothing more. You play in people's fears. You know, it wasn't that long ago, Orson Welles had a radio show called War of the Worlds. Well, it was H.G. Wells' book War of the Worlds, and played it on the radio in 1938 or 39, and had a full-scale panic in New York State. People were shooting into the air and shooting at airplanes and shooting at everything. Thought the Martians were coming. That's why you have laws in the United States and radio that you can't do that kind of stuff without putting in big block letters. This is a reenaction, not a reenaction. This is I don't know what they say, fantasy or whatever the hell it is. It's just not true. The reason for that was Orson Welles. He did it, and he did it so well that he had people thinking we were being invaded by the Martians. Well, it's the same idea. There's no difference. Only this time it's politicos, right-wing idiots, telling people they're being invaded by the Middle East or Chinese or whoever, Indians, whatever. It's just such bullshit. But it makes the world go round, I guess. Always has. Well, this lovely young woman, we'll have to wait till tomorrow when this paint finally sets up and dries. Believe it or not, there is a setup time on acrylic. It's got to dry underneath, and to get the next set of glazing on, I gotta let it dry. So I will say goodnight to you all, and you have a great evening, and I will be here tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Be there. Be here. Come and watch. And I'll talk to you. Bye-bye.